lighter shoes, it'll be easier. Oh yeah.
Cherokee tree. The Maryland soldiers are not good. Provincials, colonists, woodsmen.
Go into a little hole.
In fact, the crux of that whole deal is we'll back you up, Cherokee, when you fight your young kids who bring it home all the time. So I think that was a lot of my experience. So they this on the beeline. This is like when they're in an encampment. What they're taking on the beeline is essentially a glorified trail mix. I mean, it is seeds, it is jerky. Join me here in the Northeast Bastion. Safety, muzzle discipline, things that we still constantly talk about in the modern military. So a lot of things, as a military veteran myself, we talk about is soldiers have not changed over the 100 years. That's because human nature doesn't really change. So I like to say that a lot of the things that we were doing and living in Iraq, in the tent, not much different than the boys here in the 1750s. In a deployed frontier situation, well away from cities and supplies and such. So, a soldier is a soldier is a soldier in a lot of ways. All right, well, got a good crowd. Thank you guys for coming out. So we're doing something a little different today, and that is we are focusing on the American Revolution, because of course 1775 starts the American Revolution, so we are at the 250th anniversary of that. The first year of the Revolution, we were fighting for rights as Britishmen because we're getting taxed and we have no representation in Parliament. We've even sent Benjamin Franklin to Parliament to ask for that, but old King George is telling us to pound sand. He's not having it. So a year later in 1776, remember, we finally declare independence and start that. So we fight for a whole year, fight for British rights. The other thing that's different today, not only, like I said, we're not dressed for French and Indian War, dressed as a rifleman, so you get to see me fire a flintlock rifle versus normally we'd be firing a smoothbore military musket, usually the brown vest, or even later we get to Charleville when the French partner and start supplying us during the middle of the American Revolution. So the key differences you're going to see today, I'll show you some of that. Rifles are great. Rifles existed in the 18th century. Remember, that's primarily a hunting weapon. They're brought over by the Germans as a Jaeger rifle, and then quickly become famous as the Pennsylvania long rifle, later the Kentucky and Virginia long rifle and such. But they're used for hunting, so they said accurate up to 300 yards versus a musket. Smoothbore's only accurate up to 100 yards. So what's 100 yards? If I'm firing my brown vest, stand in this bastion, the opposite corner directly behind you all at my 12 o'clock, that's about 100 yards. So we can fire and hit that point of that other bastion. That's roughly, it's modern terms, what's that? Football field. But 300 yards, so triple that distance. That's what the rifle could do. Another key feature is I have sights because it's a rifle. I can aim it. Military musket just as a bayonet lug. There's no way to truly aim the weapon, but I'm not firing that big of a distance, so I'm just firing a lot of lead into opposite bodies. The con to the rifle is the speed of loading. So a normal musket, a normal soldier is trained to fire 3 to 4 times a minute. That's fast. And they're also firing in ranks of men, volleys, so they can keep firing, and that's how you defeat that muzzle loading, which means we're loading here at the muzzle. But with a rifle, instead of being able to load and fire for 15 to 20 seconds, this has taken me probably 45 seconds to a minute, depending how good I am, because of the loading process, which we'll demonstrate here in a second. Last piece I'll give before we fire, and don't worry, I will back up when we do the firing. I'll give you a warning before it's going to get loud. At that point, if anybody needs to cover their ears or back up for safety or anything, but I'll be back here in the middle so everybody can see, is my outfit. So not dressed like a regular soldier, so the riflemen Our dress is very particular because we're frontiersmen. We're men out here on the frontier. Remember, this is the western edge of English civilization. Hard to think about today because we're an hour and a half from D.C., but this is the frontier of the time in the late 18th century. So these men are dealing with natives and a lot of these things in their backyard all the time. So I'm wearing a wool legging because there's a lot of thickers and briars, of course, in the woods. This protects, because otherwise my breeches only come to my knees, and I just have socks, and those would get tore up real quick. The other thing is my buckle shoes. You notice I already don't have buckles because I don't have the money for them. I just tied my shoes. But these are going to get quickly replaced by moccasins. Yeah, Jerry's got his on it, because as these shoes wear out, the center seam moccasin, which we learned from the Eastern Woodland Indians, very simple. It's one piece of deer skin. You sew right up the center seam and make it. So when your buckle shoes wear out, you're going to have that. For a lot of us, it's going to be in our knapsack to switch to save my shoes for town or something like that. But the other is we're not wearing waistcoats or waistcoats. We're not wearing heavy regimental coats because we're not regular soldiers. We're wearing the rifleman's frock, which is just a nice linen fringed piece here, simple. And what you end up seeing throughout the war is Washington ends up equipping a lot of troops that are not riflemen in it, because the riflemen, especially like Morgan's rifles, Daniel Morgan gets famous for making these kills on officers and NCOs at 300 to 400 yards, documented, which is awesome. Well, the British say it's not, gentlemanly to be taking out officers. But the other thing is it starts to create psychological warfare. So he starts equipping men that are just regular soldiers in the rifle frock, because now the British are writing every man's a rifleman in the American Army. So it's psychological warfare. The other is really is economy. What do we not have? A lot of money. So this is a very cheap piece of clothing to make versus a wool coat and a wool waistcoat and all those things that go along with a standard uniform. So this is a quick and cheap, easy way. So it serves two purposes. But like I said, we're fooling the British into thinking, man, there's riflemen everywhere. So, all right, we'll back up here and we'll go through the loading and firing. We're firing blanks, but firing right here. The reason we're firing 269-year-old walls, they throw me out of here. This is now what I'll show you first. Now this will be dry. I'll go through it. If this was a regular smoothbore musket, I'll quickly just show you the manual of arms of how that would go. And you can see then when I do the rifle load, see the difference. So if this was a standard brown bass musket, it'd start up here, join right in your fire line, poise your fire line. Open your pant, come down here, and open this up, right? And they tell me handle a cartridge. I have a military cartridge. Slap that, pull it out, bite your cartridge. Prime, shut your pant, cast it out. Pour the cartridge in, quickly ram that cartridge down, and come back up. You can see how that's pretty quick. Now, of course, I'm not handling a real cartridge. You see, that's about a 15-second. A well-trained soldier, that's a pretty fast way to load. And that's why that standard soldier can fire 3 to 4 times a minute. But let's go about the rifle. The rifle doesn't have a manual of arms. I'm not a professional soldier. So I'm going to get my rifle out. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to half cock. This is a safety position. I'm going to go to my powder horn because I don't have cartridges, right? So with that, got to open the powder horn, and now I have to prime my pan with roughly 10 grains of powder. Shut that pan, hammer saw. Now I'm going to place this down. Now I'm going to go into my powder measure, which is made out of bone or antler. This one's antler. And I'm going to fill up this powder measure. And the reason I'm using that, because this tells me predetermined 60 grains of powder that I want to put in my 50 caliber rifle here. Slow going. You can see this is a slow process. So I'm going to fill it up until it's full. Now, of course, put my plug back in so I don't want to spill black powder. Commodity. Now take that powder measure, and the reason why am I doing this? One, like I said, because this tells me this is 60 grains of powder. I want that pre-measured. Too, is I don't want to load stripped on the horn like you might see in a movie. That's called a hand grenade. I don't want black powder going right over top of my rifle. So now I'm going to dump in that 60 grains of powder. Now, if we were firing live, I'd come here to my shooting pouch, and I'd pull out a greased patch of cloth that's been patched, smoothed in bear grease. Put that, pull out. I would have a little wooden block here that's got lead balls in it. Let's see if I got one here to show you. Then I'd be pulling out a lead ball, just a round lead ball, because the bullet's a shape device. Put that on top of the patch. Take that ramrod out, and now it's going to be slow going, because remember, it's not a smooth bore. This has got a 128 twist, so I got to force that round all the way down until I seat it at the breech. Turn my ramrod. Now I'm ready to fire. You see, that was a long process. So, finally, I'm going to take off my hammer stone, my leather, and keeps it from. So here's where it's going to get loud. If anybody needs to cover their ears and back up. So I'm going to bring this weapon up. I'm going to fully cock the rifle. I'm going to shoulder it and fire. That's it. But you see why this is not great, because now I've given away my position, right? I'm firing in two-man teams, so I don't want to fire until he's loaded. That's about the only thing I can do as a rifleman is two-man fire teams. So it's he's loaded, then he's going to wait. Now I'm going to reload, go through my process, let him know, and then he can fire. So it's a much slower rate of fire. Any questions?
And it was just a really nice
Hello, I'm Dan
show.
Ratcliffe. I'm here
When you shoot a blank, there's no recoil.
Crescent's
No,
rifle.
you shoot a
One
live
of the
round.
22 riflemen that
But it
come
was
out of
just
Old
so
Town,
funny.
Maryland,
I think just
during the
I wasn't expecting it to kick
1775
too much.
Beeline
And it
March,
didn't really
early
kick, it
part of the
just
American
shoved.
Revolution.
I started laughing. I was like, "Oh, I got its nickname."
Showing my flintlock rifle here today.
Punch. That's
And
what I
take this
call
out of the way. This is a leather hammer stall, and this
But I got a
literally
Jersey
is
block,
called the
so
hammer,
the
so this
block
just
is also
stalls it
the
so we don't
20s.
get any accidental
It's a
discharge.
20. Yeah,
That is a
roller
period
blade.
device. The flash
So up
guard
here
is a
in the
modern
hammer.
safety device. It keeps the flash from
Actually,
coming
it's
out
on
if we're
the-
firing beside
it's up here
other
in the
men.
prison.
But with
There's
the
a roller
flintlock
blade
rifle,
so that
it just has a loading position, so you bring it here to half cock, and the reason that's why we still say do not go off half cock,
yeah, I
because you
wanna,
see it
I'm
won't
gonna
fire.
eventually go back.
That's where that expression comes from. But we get what we call flash in the pants. So the flint, which is a sharp piece of rock here that's in the jaws of the cock, is going to strike after we're going to put 10 grains of powder down in the pan. We're going to shut that pan, and then when we're going to fire, we're going to go full cock. And so that flint's going to strike the steel, create sparks. They're going to ignite the powder in the pan, and the ignition's going to go through that touch hole and discharge the weapon. So this is how that's going to look. You see that shower of sparks that went in the pan. That's what's going to ignite that powder. So go through it and discharge our weapon here.
I know Hawkins is famous.
was the worst part. I didn't take my shoe off.
Oh, God.
And fire. And fire.